So Hanna, you make a number of cases in this book, but one of the central arguments you make is that men have basically fallen off a cliff.
Sorry.
I read the book, and I got to say it's hard to argue with the case you muster, at least on that question. Men are in trouble. Give us the kind of parameters of the disaster.
So it starts as an economic argument. Men are just having a harder time adapting to the economy, and women are adapting more easily. I can't tell you why. There's been different periods in history where men have adapted easily, but just to stay to this period in history. So then it's education and credentials. So the economy is fast changing. Who knows what it's going to throw at us? Women seem to be getting those skills and credentials at a much faster rate than men are, and they seem to be more nimble. And then that kind of filters down into our society. So in the book, I talk about how that changes marriage and our notions of fatherhood and what men can and can't do in families, and how young people have sex and make decisions. And so you really start to see it having an influence in our culture, basically.
Give me some of the numbers. I think many people, we've heard for so many years that there's a crisis with girls, that they learn differently, they're not as strong in math and science, and there's been a lot of emphasis on trying to improve that. I think it'll come as a shock, as it did to me, to learn that women far outstrip men. Girls outstrip boys in academic performance.
Yeah, I mean, I have a daughter and 2 sons, so I see some of this play out in my household. But education is the clearest argument. Basically, girls do better than boys. Now they have equal SAT scores in math, and they do better in verbal scores. So it starts out kind of early in life. And I think that's largely a developmental question. Like, we demand a lot more of younger and younger children, and girls develop faster than boys.
Right.
And so that's where it starts. And what people say is boys start to get a sense of themselves as maybe a little bit of failures in school, not because they're less smart, because boys and girls are just about equally smart. It has to do with those extra issues like discipline and can you sit still, and what our schools are demanding of kids seems to come more naturally to girls than to boys. And I have an addendum to that, which I'll get to in a minute. And then you move on to college, community college and other college. And so for every 2 degrees that men get, women get 3 degrees. That's a huge disparity. They reached parity about the 80s, and then since then women have been outstripping men. And like, you and I may think that you shouldn't need a college degree for all these jobs that you currently need a college degree for, but the fact is that you do need a college degree. It's the prerequisite for success these days. So like Michael Greenstone, who was a White House economist, said to me, listen, it's this simple. The economy has been standing at the top of the mountaintop, screaming in a loudspeaker, just get a college degree and you will make more money. Like, it's very simple. Just get the degree and you'll make more money. And as he puts it, women hear the call and men don't hear the call. And there's probably lots of reasons for that. If you go back to after World War II and the GI Bill, there you had a period of extreme flexibility in men, because I talk about men being a little more rigid and maybe women being more responsive and flexible. And men did go to college and they did become farmers and take on all these jobs they hadn't done before. So it's not like...
After fighting a war.
After fighting a war. So I think, I'm thinking a lot about why this is true. Like, is it because women have been the underdogs, or for they feel like they need to... A lot of the women I talked to in the book, they felt to me like immigrants, like my own parents are immigrants, like that immigrant drive that they have to get ahead is part of this formula that seems to be moving women. Maybe that worked for men after World War II. They were coming back from war and they were like, I want my job back, I'm getting an education, so that you need, in periods of history, different people are charging forward for different reasons.
So what's the effect in the employment markets?
So the effect in the employment market is in 2009, women became the majority of the American workforce, which is pretty remarkable. Like, a working woman was, unusual enough in the 80s and 90s that they were like sitcoms. We had Murphy Brown, because look how cool it is that women are wearing pantsuits, and isn't that interesting? Now women are the majority of the workforce. Now, it fluctuates now in 50%. Like, they became the majority and now it's kind of even, right? But still, that's pretty remarkable. You have, over the course of, 40 years, men's wages kind of steadily stagnating and then declining, whereas women's wages are steadily increasing. Now, men on average still make more, but you see, if you look at the charts, the trends are very much like this. And then, couple that with the types of jobs that are opening up. So basically the way it works is women with college degrees enter the workforce at greater numbers, and then they open up the kinds of jobs that women used to do for free. So that's like childcare and food preparation, service economy, elder care, and you have this booming healthcare industry. So you see that it's this like cascading effect where there opens up more jobs for women. And also the end of the manufacturing era. That's the most literal interpretation. So in the book, I visit towns that were largely dependent on manufacturing and in which you could have a great life. I mean, this is not a new story to people. Like, you could be a very prosperous, middle-class breadwinner, head of your household, by working as a manager in a factory, making like $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year. You had a very good life. And that option is really not available in the U.S. anymore, and I think that's really messed up a lot of men. I mean, that's really something that men have had a hard time recovering from in this generation.
Why do you think that is?
Somebody said to me something so obvious that I haven't thought of. In this town in Alabama that I write about, you have these women who do not call themselves feminist and really they're Christian, so they don't like this situation where they're suddenly they don't believe that they should be the head of their household, but they find themselves in this position. They basically started at the bottom and kind of worked their way up. But if you ask of someone who had a life handed to him, basically, where he was making a lot of money and doing pretty well, to start again at the bottom, like, that's harder. It's harder than for the women for whom, even if they don't call themselves feminist and don't want to be in this position, it's kind of exciting. You're suddenly making a paycheck, you're learning new skills, you learn new things about yourself. That's easier than to ask of the guys to start from the bottom again, or to sort of hustle or be a way that they weren't. So I got a sense over time that they had been protected in some funny way. I know we don't think of men in this way. We don't think of men as needing help, and men don't like to think of themselves as needing help, but they were protected in a sense, and so they didn't really have to work that hard for it. So women have this funny combination of opening job opportunities plus the sense that they're behind, like a sense that they really need to hustle, and that seems to create some drive where men feel like they were suddenly whacked in the head. The life that was handed to them is now gone. They don't want to start at the bottom, so you have like growing numbers of men on disability rolls, which is what happens in some European countries where you have unemployment and disability, and people give up after a certain amount of time. They just give up, and they see that their wives are earning money. The hard part of this, because the book is not that triumphalist, like there's good things for women and possible good things for men at the end of it, but some of it is kind of heartbreaking to watch unfold at this moment, because
it sounds
it's just
like
not
kind
that
of a
positive.
disaster.
Yeah, I mean, it is a disaster in some places, although, you could imagine a world in which, like, when I think of my own sons, for whom some of this is true. They come from, well-educated families. They're likely to go to college, but some of what's happening in schools is true, that it's, it doesn't come as naturally to them as it does to my daughter to do the things that school is asking. But, would it be so bad if when they grew up, it was possible for them to be dating or marry a woman who was making more money than they were, and that wouldn't be such a big deal? Like, that seems to me a good thing. Like, there are periods in history where men complain about the pressures of being a breadwinner. Why is it always us who has to be the breadwinner? I feel like if we loosen that up, it wouldn't be such a disaster.
So we've had kind of the current system, which you describe as disintegrating, and I think most objective observers would kind of agree. Just because you have the data on your side for sure. But I wonder if that system evolved for a reason. Maybe it evolved out of the basic nature of men and then the basic nature of women, which are not the same.
Well, this has been the hardest question for me as this book rolls out, is trying to think really hard, which I did not resolve in the book, about like, where does this end? I mean, you talk to in Alabama, when I talk to Christian families, it's easy for them. The man is the head of the household, and they've had to rethink that a little bit, but the man remains the head of the household, even if he's just the spiritual head of the household, or there's some different way of interpreting that. And then there's the women and childcare question, which we haven't gotten to yet. Like, at what point do we reach the natural limits? I don't think we're there yet. Like, I think there's greater room for men to be domestic without being utterly feminized and domesticated. Like, there's more space for that. For, you don't pass a guy who's taking care of his kids at the park. You shouldn't be thinking, what's wrong with that guy, right? Which at some level in society we still do. Like, I don't think there's anything inherent in
if he's
men.
doing it on the weekends or after work, or if he's doing it
No, I'm talking
full-time?
about Tuesday afternoon at 3:00. Like, why is it?
So a man who's a stay-at-home father who is
or you just
living
pass
off
that
his
guy
wife
in the park. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you say living off his wife, so you think it will never get to that point.
I'm not even attaching a value judgment to this. I'm merely noting that as a resident of Washington, D.C., who lives in a very liberal world where people think gender roles are entirely fluid, I don't know a single happy marriage in which the man is a stay-at-home dad and his wife is a breadwinner.
Because by choice, like those men have not chosen to be stay-at-home dads, probably, right?
Because men's understanding of themselves is bound up so intricately in what they do for a living. And I think that grows out of their essential nature